What would you do if your husband handed you divorce papers on your honeymoon? Would you still say it was just a mistake? Because that's what I told myself, right up until the moment the lawyer showed up at our door. I still remember the sound of the envelope hitting the table. That soft final sound that somehow felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. Nathan didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even look angry. He just stood there, perfectly calm, while I stared at the official letterhead that made our entire marriage look like a line item. My name, Isolde Merrin, printed beside the words, Petitioner, Nathan Merrin. It didn't even feel real. How do you go from dancing in front of family and friends, promising forever, to being handed legal papers less than 2 weeks later? I told myself he was overreacting, that it was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Because, honestly, that's what I believed. Our wedding had been perfect, or close enough. The venue, the flowers, the weather, it all looked like a magazine spread. Everyone kept saying how lucky I was, how Nathan was such a good man. And he was, in his own quiet, serious way. But he never understood my humor, my energy, my need to keep things light. He thought everything had to mean something. When I said I wanted to invite Elias, my ex, it wasn't to stir trouble. It was closure, maturity, proof that I could move on and still be kind. Nathan hesitated, of course. He asked if it was really necessary. I laughed, said it would be childish not to, and like always, he gave in. Maybe that was the problem. He gave in too easily. It made me feel powerful, like I could handle both of them in the same room, past and present, without losing balance. Elias and I had history, sure, but it wasn't emotional anymore. At least, that's what I told myself. I wanted him there to see me win, to see me adored by someone better, steadier. Nathan never understood that need, that strange satisfaction of being admired by those who once walked away. My sister Faye called it poetic. She said most women wouldn't have the courage. "You're rewriting your own story," she told me as we got ready that morning. I liked that. It sounded brave, not messy. But even then, in the back of my mind, I caught the way Nathan looked at me while I laughed with Elias during the rehearsal dinner. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He was proud, but guarded, like he could sense the shift and didn't know how to stop it. Still, I brushed it off. I was the bride. It was my day. Everyone was supposed to focus on me, not on old feelings or awkward glances. And when the music started, and I walked down that aisle, I told myself the past was buried. Only later would I realize I'd invited it to sit in the front row. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The day started like every dream I ever had about my wedding. Sunlight spilling through lace curtains, champagne glasses clinking, and my mother crying happy tears while my sister tried not to ruin her makeup. The air in the bridal suite smelled like roses and hairspray, and I remember thinking I'd finally done it. I'd made it. The venue was a stone estate surrounded by wildflowers, the kind of place people booked years in advance. Everyone told me how stunning it looked, how elegant the setup was. I couldn't stop smiling. I wanted everyone to see what I'd built, the life I'd chosen, the man I'd tamed. Nathan looked perfect too. He always did. Tall, sharp suit, steady eyes that never wandered. That's what I used to love about him. How calm he was, how sure of everything. But lately, his stillness felt like judgment, like he was silently measuring everything I said and did. Even that morning, when he peeked into the bridal room to say hello, his tone was too serious. "You look beautiful," he said, and I smiled because of course I did. Then he added quietly, "You're sure about the guest list?" That tone again, controlled, careful. I knew exactly who he meant. "Elias?" I said, pretending not to care. "It's not a big deal, Nathan. We're adults." He nodded but didn't smile. I just don't want anything to distract from us. I kissed his cheek and told him he was being silly. What could possibly go wrong? The ceremony itself was flawless. The sun stayed behind the clouds just enough to make the light soft and golden. Everyone gasped when I walked down the aisle, just like they should have. Nathan's expression wavered between awe and something else, something uncertain, but I ignored that part. I was radiant. I'd planned every detail, from the lace on my dress to the timing of the violinist's entrance. The day was mine. After the vows and the photos, everyone relaxed. Champagne poured endlessly, laughter filled the garden, and I finally felt that rush of being adored. People kept telling me how incredible everything looked, how calm and collected I was. Even Elias, standing by the bar in his tailored suit, gave me that look, the one I used to live for. It wasn't inappropriate, just knowing, like a secret shared between equals. I went over to greet him, ignoring the tiny knot in my stomach. "You clean up well," I said, handing him a drink. He smiled. "You always liked being the center of the universe." "And you always liked orbiting it," I shot back, playful but with just enough truth to sting. Across the lawn, I saw Nathan watching us. I waved, smiling big, making sure everyone saw how secure I was, how unbothered. When he didn't wave back, I rolled my eyes. Men never understood nuance. Dinner was served under string lights that twinkled as dusk set in. People toasted us. His friends said kind things. My friends teased me. My sister made everyone laugh. The atmosphere was warm, effortless. I leaned into it, soaking up every bit of admiration. But then came the part I should have handled better, the speeches. Nathan's best man spoke first, then Faye. Her speech was emotional and loud, all about our childhood dreams of fairy tale weddings and finally finding someone patient enough to handle my fire. The crowd roared with laughter. I saw Nathan smile, but faintly. When it was my turn, I stood up and thanked everyone, saying all the right things. And then, for some reason, I made a joke. One of those impulsive, too honest lines that sounds clever until it isn't. I looked at my bridesmaids, already tipsy and grinning, and said, "I guess the wrong man cried first at the altar." It got a big laugh. Even Faye doubled over. I meant it as a light joke. Elias had teared up earlier when I walked down the aisle, which everyone had noticed. It was supposed to be funny. But when I glanced at Nathan, his face had gone completely still. He didn't laugh. His hand resting on the table tightened slightly, but he said nothing. That silence spread like smoke. I laughed again, louder, to fill the gap. "Come on," I said, raising my glass. "We're all adults here." A few people chuckled nervously. Elias smirked into his drink. My stomach twisted, but I pushed through, finishing the toast like nothing happened. Later, when the music started and everyone flooded the dance floor, I went to find Nathan. He was standing near the terrace, looking out at the garden lights. "You okay?" I asked, looping my arm through his. He looked at me and said quietly, "Are you serious now?" I laughed, light and dismissive. "What did you expect? It was just a joke." He didn't argue, didn't make a scene. He just nodded once, said he needed air, and walked away. The rest of the night blurred. Music, laughter, the weight of my own charm, holding everything together. But every so often, I caught sight of him on the edge of the crowd, distant, watching. For the first time, I felt something cold in my chest, like a shadow at the edge of a perfect picture. Still, I told myself he'd get over it. Everyone loved the joke. Everyone laughed. What kind of man lets one harmless line ruin the best day of his life? I smiled for the cameras, clinked glasses with my friends, and ignored the uneasy silence building beneath the music. The night air was warm, the music softer now, the crowd thinning as the bar lights dimmed, and the fairy lights above us flickered like they were tired too. I'd taken off my heels and was walking barefoot through the grass, the bottom of my dress already dusty. People were still laughing, couples swaying to old songs. but everything had that hazy, fragile calm that comes after too much champagne. I saw Nathan talking to his father near the fountain, calm and polite as always, while I drifted toward the garden tables where Elias sat alone nursing a drink. I told myself I was just being a gracious hostess, the bride checking on her guests, nothing more. He looked up when I approached, that familiar half-smile tugging at his mouth. "Mrs. Merrin," he said, like he was testing how it sounded. I laughed, waving it off. Feels weird hearing it out loud, like it belongs to someone older. "You always said you'd never settle down," he said, leaning back. "Guess I lost that bet." "It's not settling," I replied quickly. "It's choosing peace." It sounded rehearsed, and maybe it was. He raised his glass a little. "To peace, then." I clinked mine against his, pretending it was harmless. The music carried from the main hall, something slow, romantic. I should have gone back inside, found Nathan, danced like a normal bride. But instead I stayed there, talking about the past as if it were a story that didn't involve me. Elias said he was proud of me, that I looked happier than ever. I told him I was, but it came out too fast, too defensive. He looked at me for a moment, then said quietly, "You really mean that?" I should have said yes, I should have laughed, but the words stuck. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the way he still looked at me like I was the only thing in focus. I said something vague, like, "Happiness is complicated." He smiled a little. "It always was with you." The garden was empty by then. Everyone had drifted back inside for the cake cutting, but I lingered under the string lights, letting the night swallow the noise. I don't know why I let him stand closer. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't affected. Maybe I wanted to feel that power again, the kind you only have when someone still wants you but can't have you. He brushed a strand of hair from my shoulder, the way he used to, and said I hadn't changed. That's when it happened. A kiss. Quick, unplanned, soft. I froze, then stepped back immediately. My heart pounded, but I forced a laugh. "You can't do that," I said, keeping my tone playful. He shrugged, looking embarrassed. "Sorry, old habits." "Forget it," I said. "It's nothing." And that's what I decided it would be. Nothing. A moment lost in champagne and nostalgia. No one saw. Or at least, that's what I believed. When I went back inside, Nathan was nowhere near the dance floor. My friends were laughing, Elias had disappeared, and everything suddenly felt off balance. I smiled too widely at the photographer, hugged too many people, anything to drown the unease crawling up my neck. Later, in the car ride to the hotel, Nathan was silent, the kind of silence that fills every inch of space until it becomes unbearable. I asked if he was tired. He said, "I saw something tonight." My pulse jumped, but I kept my voice calm. "You saw me dancing with my friends, I hope." He didn't look at me. "Don't lie, Isolde. I know what I saw." I laughed lightly, though my throat felt tight. Elias kissed my cheek. "That's all. You're making it sound worse." He turned then, eyes steady. "He didn't kiss your cheek." "It's our wedding night, Nathan. You're seriously going to start a fight over a misunderstanding." I said it sharply, like his doubt was the insult, not my action. He looked away again, shoulders tense. When we reached the hotel, he said nothing as we checked in. The clerk smiled, congratulated us. I smiled back, acting like everything was fine. In the elevator, the silence was unbearable, so I reached for his hand. He didn't take it. Up in the room, I started undressing, trying to turn the night around, but he just sat in the chair by the window, still in his suit. "You embarrassed me," he said finally. His voice was flat. I turned, pretending to be shocked. "Embarrassed you? For what? Being friendly?" "For pretending," he said, "for making me the fool in front of everyone." I sighed, grabbing the makeup wipes from the counter. "You're being dramatic. Nobody noticed anything. You're looking for problems where there aren't any." He stared at me for a long time, then stood and went to the door. I'm going for a walk. I didn't stop him. I just said, don't take too long. People will talk if the groom disappears. He didn't answer. I fell asleep that night, convincing myself it was all fine, that by morning he'd apologize for overreacting. But when I woke up, he wasn't beside me. I found him sitting on the balcony, staring at his phone. When I asked what he was doing, he said nothing, just turned the screen toward me. A photo. Grainy, dimly lit, but clear enough. Elias and me under the string lights, his hand on my cheek, his mouth on mine. My stomach dropped. I managed to laugh, though my voice cracked. That's not even... Someone must have taken that from a weird angle. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, and I realized then that silence could be louder than shouting. The morning after we got back from the estate, everything felt wrong. The house was spotless, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Nathan moved quietly, packing away gifts, folding his suits, acting like I wasn't there. When I tried to joke about being officially back to reality, he didn't respond. He just said he had a few errands to run and left. No kiss, no smile, just gone. I stood there in the doorway, still in my robe, wondering if this was what punishment looked like, coldness disguised as calm. By noon, I'd already started spinning my own story. I told myself he'd cool off, that once people stopped talking, everything would settle. But the whispers started faster than I expected. My phone buzzed non-stop, friends tagging me in posts, cute wedding clips being shared. At first it was flattering, until I saw one I hadn't approved. Me in the garden, leaning too close to Elias. The caption was harmless, but the comments weren't. People notice things. They always do. Faye came over that afternoon, all fake sympathy and iced coffee. You need to control the narrative, she said, scrolling through her phone. Don't let people decide what happened. You post first, make it look like everyone's exaggerating. I didn't even do anything, I said, pacing the kitchen. It was one stupid kiss that didn't mean... I stopped. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Faye smiled. Then own it, laugh it off, say someone caught a bad angle. You're the bride. No one wants to believe you ruined your own wedding. It sounded smart, so I did exactly that. I posted a photo of me and Nathan cutting the cake, captioned it, "Some people love drama more than love itself. We're fine. Thanks for caring." Within minutes, the comments poured in. Heart emojis, messages of support. A few close friends texted to say I was handling it so gracefully. I told myself that meant I'd won. But that night, Nathan came home, saw the post, and asked quietly, "We're fine." I looked up from my phone. "Yes, we are. Why wouldn't we be?" He nodded once, like he was filing away evidence. "Good to know." The next morning, he didn't take his coffee in the kitchen. He brewed it in the garage. He stopped answering my texts during the day. And when I asked what was wrong, he said, "You're very good at pretending, Isolde. Keep it up." I tried to make him laugh, tried to be sweet, but nothing broke through that wall. The more distant he became, the more defensive I got. I started calling him cold, paranoid, insecure. I told Faye he was losing it, that maybe the stress of the wedding had broken something in him. She nodded like she agreed, though I could tell she was uneasy now too. Then one night, I saw his laptop open on the counter. Normally, he was private about his work, but curiosity got the better of me. I just wanted reassurance, proof that he wasn't actually doing anything drastic. But there it was, an email thread with a lawyer. Subject line, marital annulment consultation. I froze, staring at the screen. The date was from 3 days earlier, our second day back. Attached were screenshots, timestamps, even guest witness notes. He'd already started documenting everything. My pulse hammered as I scrolled. One message said, "Proceed discreetly." She's unpredictable when cornered. Unpredictable. The word stung. I slammed the laptop shut before he came back from the shower, heart pounding. He hadn't filed yet. That much I knew. there was still time to fix it or twist it. That night, when we sat down to dinner, I brought it up casually. "I saw you emailing someone," I said, keeping my tone light. "Work thing?" He didn't look up. "You shouldn't be reading my emails." I smiled tightly. I wasn't snooping. I was just near the counter. It popped up. He set down his fork. "Then you already know." I tried to laugh. "Know what? That you're being ridiculous? Nathan, you're talking about lawyers when we just got married." He didn't answer. He just stood, took his plate to the sink, and left the room. The silence after he went upstairs was unbearable. I texted Faye immediately. "He's talking to a lawyer." She replied, "You need to get ahead of it before he ruins your name." So the next day, I started calling friends, dropping little hints that Nathan was struggling, that the wedding stress had made him distant, unstable even. I told his mother he'd been acting off. She didn't buy it, of course. Diana never liked me, but other people did. They started checking in, asking how I was holding up. I played the part beautifully, fragile but hopeful, the misunderstood wife trying to save her marriage. By the end of that week, half the people we knew thought Nathan was having a breakdown. The other half thought he'd been unfaithful first. I'd done what I always did, turned guilt into sympathy. But that night, as I was scrolling through my phone, another notification popped up. A message request from an unknown number. I opened it and froze. It was a photo. Elias again, me again, the same moment under the garden lights, but from a different angle this time. Clearer, closer, my hand on his chest, his lips on mine. No caption, no words, just proof. I stared at it until the screen went dark, and for the first time, I realized Nathan wasn't trying to ruin me. He was just waiting for me to do it myself. The weeks that followed were like walking through fog. Nathan barely spoke to me, yet somehow his silence became louder than any fight we'd ever had. He still slept in our bed, still brewed his coffee in the morning, but everything felt divided. He'd answer questions with one-word replies, and when I asked if he still loved me, he just said, "I'm handling things." That phrase, handling things, became a weapon. I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded final. I tried to fix my image first, not the marriage. Damage control always came easier than guilt. I visited his parents with flowers, smiling through Diana's frostbitten politeness. "I just want peace," I told her. "Nathan's been under a lot of stress, and I think people have misunderstood what happened." She didn't even blink. "Misunderstood?" she said. "You kissed another man at your wedding, Isolde. That's not a misunderstanding. That's character." I laughed, pretending not to take offense, but inside I felt the sting of truth. After that, I stopped visiting. I focused instead on building sympathy online. I started posting cheerful photos, coffee cups, morning walks, anything that looked serene. I made sure every caption hinted at resilience. Healing isn't linear. Some storms are blessings in disguise. People ate it up. Messages poured in from acquaintances saying they admired my strength. I told myself Nathan would see it and remember why he'd fallen for me. But Nathan wasn't looking at my posts anymore. He wasn't looking at me at all. I found out from a friend that he'd been meeting with someone downtown every Wednesday. When I asked where he went, he said, "I'm working on the future." That should have sounded hopeful. It didn't. Then Faye called one night, her voice lower than usual. "I heard Nathan's moving money around," she said. "Something about changing accounts." I laughed it off at first. "We share everything. He wouldn't do that." But when I checked, the joint account was nearly empty. Only my portion remained. I confronted him in the kitchen. "Are you seriously separating our finances?" He didn't even look up from his papers. "You said you wanted independence. I'm giving it to you." "That's not what I meant," I said, my voice shaking. "You're punishing me." He set down his pen. "I'm protecting myself." That was when panic set in. Not guilt, panic. the kind that makes your chest tighten when you realize you're no longer in control of the story. So I started rewriting it again. I told our friends Nathan was having a reaction, that the stress had made him cold and controlling. I even told one mutual friend he'd been tracking my phone. I could see pity forming in their eyes, the same pity I'd once used on other people. It worked for a while. People stopped asking questions about the photo. They started asking if I was safe. Meanwhile, Nathan's calmness never broke. Every time I tried to provoke him, crying, shouting, accusing, he'd just look at me with that maddening stillness. "You don't get to rewrite what happened," he said once. "You just don't know the ending yet." I didn't understand what he meant until later. One afternoon, I went to his office unannounced. The secretary tried to stop me, but I brushed past her. He was sitting at his desk, perfectly composed, a folder open in front of him. When he saw me, he didn't flinch. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Then maybe talk to me at home," I snapped. "I'm not the villain you're making me out to be." He closed the folder and pushed it toward me. "You might want to read before you keep saying that." Inside were copies of messages, mine and Elias's, the flirty ones, the nostalgic ones, all time-stamped before the wedding. He'd even printed the ones I thought I deleted. My throat went dry. "You went through my phone," I said, forcing outrage into my voice. "No," he said simply. "You left your cloud account logged in on our laptop. I didn't go looking. I just stopped ignoring." I tried to laugh. "So you're building some kind of case now? You want to play lawyer?" He looked at me for a long time. "I don't play anymore, Isolde." For a second, I almost said sorry, but the word felt foreign. Instead, I said, "You're going to regret this. People already think you're unstable. I can make that worse." He didn't blink. "You already have," he said quietly, "but not for me." When I left the office, I called Faye again. "He's gone crazy," I said. "He's printing things, keeping records." She hesitated. "Isolde, if he has proof, maybe you should stop talking and listen." I hung up on her. That night, Nathan didn't come home. I called, texted, nothing. At midnight, I heard his car pull up. I stood at the top of the stairs, ready to start a fight, to demand control back. But he didn't even look up. He just walked past me, calm, carrying another envelope. He placed it on the table and said, "You'll want to read this one carefully." Then he went upstairs and closed the door. I didn't open it right away. I poured myself a drink, convincing myself it was just another empty threat. But when I finally tore it open, the heading made my hands shake. Notice of legal proceedings. Petition for annulment. For the first time, I couldn't think of a single way to spin it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch staring at the legal papers spread across the coffee table like they were written in another language. My name was everywhere. Isolde Merrin, respondent, defendant, party of interest. It didn't even look like me anymore. I wanted to wake him, to shake him, to make him explain what he thought he was doing. But at 2 a.m, I could hear him breathing steadily upstairs, completely at peace, while my world tilted out from under me. By morning, I convinced myself it wasn't real. People threaten legal action all the time when they're angry. It was just a scare tactic, a way to get my attention. When Nathan came down for coffee, I tried to sound casual. "So we're serving paperwork now," I said, forcing a little laugh. He didn't look at me. "They're not threats, Isolde. They're steps." "Steps to what? Destroying your own marriage?" "To protecting what's left of my dignity." The way he said it, quiet, final, made my stomach twist. I wanted to yell, to cry, to make him see how ridiculous it sounded. "Everyone fights," I snapped. "But normal couples talk things out. They don't run to lawyers because someone misread a situation." He finally met my eyes. "It stopped being a misunderstanding the second you decided to lie about it." Then he grabbed his briefcase and left for work. The silence afterward was unbearable. I called Faye again, pacing the living room while she tried to sound calm. "He's serious," she said. "If he's filed, you need to get a lawyer too." I don't need one, I said quickly. He's bluffing. He wants me to panic. But by the end of the day, a man in a grey suit showed up at the door. He handed me a sealed envelope, nodded politely, and left. Inside was a letter from Nathan's attorney. Formal, cold, deliberate. It listed everything. Infidelity, public humiliation, emotional distress, damage to reputation. There were photos, screenshots, even transcriptions of text messages. It wasn't just about a kiss anymore. It was a case. That evening, Nathan came home to find the papers scattered across the dining table. "You're unbelievable," I said. "You're weaponizing our life." He took off his jacket calmly. "You did that when you decided our marriage was a performance." I tried to sound reasonable, like the adult in the room. "You're overreacting. You can't just erase me because you're embarrassed." He poured himself water, ignoring my tone. "You erased yourself, Isolde. I'm just filing the paperwork." Something inside me snapped. "You think people are going to believe you? Everyone knows you're cold, withdrawn. I've already told them how distant you've been. They pity you." He looked at me then, steady, almost pitying. "They won't for long." The next day, I found out what he meant. His lawyer sent copies of the case summary to both families. To mine, to his, even to the pastor who officiated the ceremony. The evidence was there for everyone to see. I started getting texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some polite, some brutal. My mother called crying, asking how I could humiliate a good man like that. My father said he couldn't even show his face at work. I hung up on them both. Nathan didn't say a word about any of it. He moved around the house like I wasn't there, eating quietly, sleeping soundly. Every calm gesture drove me mad. I begged him one night to stop the process, to at least talk before finalizing anything. "You don't have to do this," I said, tears I didn't even mean spilling down my cheeks. "We can fix it. We can start over." He set down his glass and said, "I'm not trying to hurt you, Isolde. I'm trying to be free of you." I didn't know how to respond. I'd always believed I had control over people, stories, consequences. But this was different. He wasn't yelling, wasn't begging, wasn't even angry. He was done. When I went to the law office later that week, I tried to charm the lawyer. I told him Nathan was making a mistake, that we were just having a rough patch. He looked at me politely, then handed me another envelope. "Your husband asked that I give you this personally," he said. Inside was a copy of the court's response. His petition had been accepted. The hearing was scheduled in 3 weeks. I laughed. I actually laughed. He can't just erase a marriage. That's not how it works. The lawyer folded his hands. He provided sufficient evidence of fraud and infidelity before completion of marriage vows. The court sees it as grounds for annulment. "Fraud?" I repeated, stunned. He nodded. "You concealed prior emotional involvement with another man. And according to these communications," he tapped the folder, "there was intent before the ceremony." I wanted to scream, to tell him it wasn't like that I just wanted closure, validation, anything but deceit. But the words died in my throat. When I came home that night, Nathan was packing a box of books. I asked where he was going. "Somewhere quiet," he said. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice breaking between disbelief and pride. "You're really ending this like a business deal?" He looked at me one last time, calm as ever. "You made it public, Isolde. I'm just signing the paperwork." And then he left. No slammed door, no dramatic exit, just silence. The kind that means it's already over. For the first time since the wedding, I realized he'd taken back every ounce of power I thought I had. The house was quiet when I woke up the next morning. His things were gone. No suits in the closet, no toothbrush by the sink, not even his mug on the counter. It was like he'd been erased from the space completely. I stood there, staring at the empty dresser, waiting to feel angry. But all I felt was the air, cold and still, pressing against me. I checked my phone, hoping for a message, even something short. Nothing. Instead, there was a new email from the law office. Final confirmation of annulment and property transfer complete. Attached was a scanned signature. Mine forged, legally or not, it didn't matter. It was done. I walked through the house like it belonged to someone else. The walls were too white, too clean, stripped of every photo that once made us look perfect. My family wasn't calling anymore. Even Faye had gone quiet. The only sound left was the ticking clock and my own breath. When the mail arrived that afternoon, there was one last envelope with Nathan's handwriting on the front. Inside was a single photo, our wedding picture, folded neatly down the middle. On the back, in his small, careful script, he'd written, "You wanted everyone to see you. Now they will." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the picture until my eyes blurred. For the first time, I didn't know what story to tell or who to blame. The silence he left behind was complete, and I understood then what his calm had really meant. It wasn't anger, it was freedom. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.